as I would expect.
If the likelihood of speaking is well, our office is closed. I have everyone set up to work remotely. And everything in the and although some people, with my permission, are coming into the office, but if you're in the office, and that's just fine, but I don't want to get too many. And so that's okay. Well, you're a small office. Now, from 8, they're doing business hours. But if someone calls, like if you call me, you don't go to, and you won't call myself, and you come to mine, you call a new number, it's going to get you. You're going to go to this directory, and you're going to be talking to them. So, and we're all set up. It's your business of government that goes on. I have worked with this since 7 years. I'm working. I typically work with that. And the city attorney says, we have all kinds of the restaurant closing business, it says that we have 2 emergency meetings.
We're going to hold until we get a quorum.
Now, I have this fear of things going to shut down. You actually received an email from this. I've got our building for at home. Well, what if she gets serious? So I'm going to be sending out bills for everybody. And then further, probably in some places, people aren't. They're not coming in there on the payment. So, yeah, so, yeah. It wouldn't take long to take a small, I got them processed for trying for $100,000 just so that and there's no question about it. But even that was slow. I mean, it's something about the narrow where an act is for a week. And you'd exhaust the resources of people who have equities that or certain people might say, well, I'm going to support people who have equities.
Well, we have that building at just south of West Virginia that has and they all have a shut. So we got like April 3
So James texted me, he said he's running about 5 or 10 minutes.
Okay. I'm sticking around for,
So,
thank you so much for
no
that.
problem. Because we can always, he's not here when we get to his item, then I will just suggest that we go to the other.
Sure.
And then by the time we finish with that, he should be.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. I just want to be on it. There were a lot of people like there yesterday this afternoon, but it's like a lot of people biking and running and they're not closely together in groups. But it was like, yeah, the first like when all the stories were happening, everyone's gonna be on a side now. I went on a walk.
Well, I think that being outside, it's
Yeah, that's
really is a good thing.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the March 19th, 2020 Downtown Design Review Committee. First order of business is to silence all cell phones, and then we can have roll call.
Anthony Blatt,
Here.
Corey Bates, Gary Jones, Julie Kriegel,
Here.
Deborah Richards, Mariana Stadur, Rosie Trujillo.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Second item on the agenda is approval of the minutes. The minutes are in your packet.
I move that we approve the minutes.
That is a Kriegel-Jones motion. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Item number 3 is cases withdrawn, and there are none. Item 4 is continuance requests, and there are no items. Item 5 is the consent docket. And unless there is anything that needs further discussion, either from the committee or from the audience, then I'll entertain a motion for the consent docket.
Move to approve the consent docket.
That is a Jones-Trujillo motion. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 6 is cases for individual consideration, and item A is DTCA 20-00024 at 829 West California Avenue. Is the applicant present? Okay. Do you want to present this for us, Laura?
So I have the sign-in sheet, and I've already put you on there, James. So the applicant is here for this one. We were anticipating he might be a little late because he was out in that weather driving here. So this is before you today because of the guideline that we have against parking lots on corners. This request is there's an existing building that is proposed to be demolished, and they want to put in a parking lot that would serve some redevelopment that they're doing in the surrounding area. And this is at the corner of California and Fred Jones. It's the northeast corner. One of the things I provided you in your packet was just how many other parking lots on corners there are in close proximity to this one. And when I started writing the list, I thought, oh, I'll just have a couple, but I literally had a street, and then it was like this corner, and it was like both sides of an intersection. So it's fairly common in this area, not that staff necessarily doesn't think that prominent corners should be reserved for structures, and we do. However, in this case, and I will flip to what they're proposing to do, is they're proposing, it's in this area, they actually kind of showed an overall They're wanting to tear down that building, put in a parking lot that would have one-way circulation. They're currently working with traffic management on the parking here along the street, and as I stated in the staff report, once they get those issues resolved, it'll come back for the streetscape, the sidewalk, the street trees, the landscaping. It's part of an overall plan that's going to involve the building to the north and some other work along Fred Jones. You might recall that north of Sheridan, Fred Jones has actually been closed and vacated, even though the street is still in there. And so this is some more development, some redevelopment that's being done by the same people that have done all the work out there that's has really vitalized the area. So staff is recommending approval of this, but I just want to stress it's not that we don't think it's important to have buildings on corners, because it is. This is a integral piece of the proposed redevelopment that they're doing in that area.
Do we have any questions for staff? Do we have any questions for staff?
I do have a question. There is so much development going on down there, and there's so many things that are happening. I assume that there is some kind of master plan of how everything is going to play out. And so is this part of, you had indicated a strategy at least for 3 of the corners there, but as far as that area as a whole, is this consistent with what they see as the future development of that particular area of the city?
Well, what I would say is that the property owners and the developers involved in this part of town are driving what is occurring. And so I think you can kind of look at where this started, which is north of here, and as they've gotten that finished, it's kind of spreading out. And so I think it's a good scenario to have happen, because that previous development is driving some additional development. So this is really driven by the property owners and the developers in that area.
We have had other cases that have come before us.
Yes, and as I said in the staff report, we've had a few other cases. The most recent one was Classen and 9th Street. That was a much bigger area, and as you might recall, that was parking needed for a business across the street that it is just growing leaps and bounds, and they needed a heck of a lot more parking. And then we had the one that's across from the Memorial downtown, where they did the parking garage, and in that case, we anticipate at some point they're going to be coming back for a building where that parking lot is. So I think each of these has been different, but yes, we've had some others approved by the committee.
Would the applicant like to say anything?
Laura did a great job. So kind of what we're working on right now is the old Oklahoma Clutch building.
Which is that right
which is
there.
on the corner of Fred Jones and Sheridan. It's going to be 3 venues, as we call them. So there's planned on a bakery with a coffee shop, a deli, and then we're looking at doing a kind of a speakeasy in a basement. Part of the overall is to continue development of Fred Jones. That happened on the other side of Sheridan. Part of our clients own both sides of this block and own down California, and they're trying to acquire the rest of that dirt parking lot. So I anticipate that will become parking at some time. California kind of dead ends now into the new Classen Western, so it's not a great corner anymore. But I think Laura did pretty much it.
Do you mind stating your name just for the record?
I'm sorry, James Boswell. I'm the
Thank you.
architect on the project.
Do we have any questions for the applicant?
About the only other thing I'll add is this alley that's shown has been vacated in district court. So when you look to the east, if you drive by there, you're going to see there's like a wall, which is, it's like a fence that one of the property owners put up. I think you'll see dumpsters sitting in the middle of it because it doesn't exist anymore.
Wait, which
This alley right here. See where it says existing vacated alley? And so the property owner that has this piece also is the property owner that has this piece, and so they each ended up with half of that alley. So they control and allow them to have access through there, even though the alley technically doesn't exist anymore.
Do you have any questions for the applicant?
I make a motion that we approve the application on the basis that the project complies with the regulations and guidelines of the Downtown Design District zoning ordinance as referenced in Section C and D of the staff report.
Second.
So Jones-Kriegel motion, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Item 7A under other business is CE 01014 at 410 Southwest 6th Street. I see the applicant's present. You want to?
Yes, they are here. So we have two of these, and Anna will have similar discussions. This is immediately west of Scissortail Park. If you drive down there, you will see, as we see in the rest of my pictures, that everything has been demolished on this block except for these buildings at this location. And these buildings are shown in the TIF as being ones for preservation. And so they've submitted a request to close the alley, and as I stated in the staff report, because I want to quote from it, they have advised that it's for redevelopment of the block, but they don't have a plan that they can share with us. And staff was concerned when we were reviewing this. It's helpful to have a plan because then it provides us with more weight isn't the right word, but more things to base our recommendations on. And so we had some meetings, we had some discussion, and one of the concerns we have when you have alleys vacated is what happens to back a house. And we've had some situations here where we've had some alleys vacated where we end up with the dumpsters out next to the roadway, and we're still struggling with some of those in some areas around downtown with, okay, we thought we addressed it, but we apparently didn't address it good enough, and we don't want that to have happen, as well as deliveries and all that other stuff. So this particular subdivision in this block had east-west alleys. When you cross over Walker, we had some really interesting east-west and north-south alleys in the same block. They didn't have that over here. And so we decided that as long as they had a requirement to address the back-of-house uses in the future development, that we would be okay with supporting closing the alley. We understand that there's a desire to have density, have height, especially around the park. I mean, if that's going to be a really fantastic area for redevelopment. So staff has a condition, which is kind of a first for us on a CE, that we recommend approval of this with the condition that the owner-developer provide for access to back-of-house functions internal to the development on the site plan for future development required to be submitted for Downtown Design District approval. Because we know we're going to have it later. We know the building is probably going to go over the threshold of 20,000 square feet, so you're going to see it. And that's what our recommendation is here. And we had discussed that with the applicant, and they had indicated that they were okay with that one, but I'll let them address that.
But I have a question. So, because in the past you guys have not recommended it, and another area is closing alleys. So is it, again, is it because of projected 20,000 square feet? Why is your recommendation different on this one?
What I would say is, well, if you want to look in this surrounding area, have we supported vacating alleys? Most we have in this area. We had to do it for the park. We had to do it for the convention center. And that was blocks worth of streets and alleys to accommodate those developments. So in this particular case, when you have an east-west alley and we want development at the street and we want density, and in this case you would say you probably want density in the height toward the park, when you have an alley cutting right down the middle of it, yes, you could do it, but it wouldn't really maximize that.
I understand. I'm just saying in the past we have said come back with your plan.
And that is
in other areas of town. And I
correct.
understand for the convention center and for the hotel and the park, you've got to do that. So I'm just curious if this one is just different, or why this one is just different. And I don't mean to be needling you today,
But is it based on location? Because with the site fronting it, with the park fronting the east side, is it not a condition that no matter what goes here, it really does need to rotate and it needs to orient towards the park? And therefore you could, is that the reason why? Is it based on
that's part of what we're looking at. We looked at a bunch of different options on what to do with this, as well as what's happening around the area, and the fact that to see return, to get the density, all of that gets taken into consideration. Could we have recommended that we could have gone the way you were just saying. We just felt the next one down that we're getting ready to do has a time frame on it, that would have made it a little more difficult, and I'll discuss that when we get to it. But I think our comments have been evolving as we've looked at this stuff, and when you have developers that are willing to do different things with the trash so that it's hidden, with the deliveries, with all of that, so that we don't back things up on the street, have visuals that we don't want to see, because of how it's hidden. And I think that's where we're headed with what's going to happen here. I think the development we're going to see around the park is going to be in keeping with the investment the city has made in that area.
Totally separate. It might not be because we don't know what a plan is, but what is the requirement or restriction on parking, surface parking around the park? Is that allowed at all?
You mean on-street parking?
No, like a surface parking lot. If somebody came in and proposed, we're going to develop a portion of it, but we're going to set aside a spot that fronts the park, is surface parking currently allowed?
Surface park, so I'll just look at the last case that we just had. That I have a guideline against parking lots on corners, and that would be the same here.
Okay.
I don't have anything that would prohibit. I can't imagine.
It would be highest and best use.
Exactly, and all of the surface parking we have in this area literally has been where buildings have been torn down, and it's kind of a holding pattern until a building comes in.
Good morning, Mark Zidzat with Johnson & Associates, 1 East Sheridan Avenue. I think Laura pretty well summed everything up here with Tim Johnson. If you have any questions, I think one of the biggest factors of this site is what was discussed, having an east-west alley and development that is likely going to be giving you a continuous street wall along Hudson and possibly Walker. That alley in that configuration just won't work. So we do agree with the condition that has been placed on it, that when we come back, back-of-house operations will all be done internal, so you won't have dumpsters and parking spaces, as Laura pointed out.
Do we have any questions for the applicant? I'm curious, and I realize that you might not have an answer for this yet, but is there a projected timeline for when a master plan is going to be rolled out?
Not on this site.
Okay.
You'll probably get a different answer on, if you ask that question on the next one.
I make a motion that we provide a recommendation for approval to the Planning Commission for the request to close the right-of-way for the alleyway line between South Walker Avenue, Southwest 7th Street, South Hudson Avenue, and Southwest 6th Street, with the condition that the owner-developer provide for access to back-of-the-house functions internal to the development on the site plan for future development required to be submitted to the Downtown Design District approval.
I'll second.
It's a Jones-Trio motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. 7D is CE 01015 at 410 Southwest 3rd Street.
I did it again. Laura Griggs, Planning Department. I keep forgetting to do that. So this block is 3 blocks north of the last one that we looked at. And currently, I thought it'd be down by today, but it's not. The Goodwill buildings are in the process of being demoed. There's just a little piece of it left. And recently, this property changed hands. There is a piece of property in this corner is actually owned by the redevelopment of, I'm trying to think of what hat that is, the Alliance or Oklahoma City Urban Renewal Authority owns that piece. And so this alley happens to be in, and it just kind of flowed into the parking lot. But it can't go west and it can't go east because of the park. So in this particular case, there is time constraints that were put on this development of this by the city, or I don't know if it's city, if I misspeak, please correct me, Susan. I don't know if it was the redevelopment authority or it was the city that put the time constraints on it, which is why I said if you ask that question about the timing, you'll hear something different. And so this had the same issues that we talked about before, in that this is, so here is the boulevard, here's the park. One can imagine that the building is going to be, definitely you're going to have a main face of the building facing the park, probably even facing the boulevard, so you wouldn't necessarily want to lose anything, and cutting it down the middle with the alley would really hamper future development of that one. And so we're proposing the same condition on this one for all the same discussion that we had on the last one, and the staff report was a very easy staff report to do, by the way, because they were both basically the same. And the applicant is here. We discussed this with them. They were aware of the condition that we were going to be recommending.
Do we have any comments for staff? Do we have anything further from the applicant?
Mark Zitzel, 1 East Sheridan Avenue. No, again, Laura summed everything up. There was a contract in place that has certain stipulations, one of which is the building had to be torn down. I believe it was within 60 days of the closing. So they're moving along to hit these deadlines. I think approved plans was 2 years, I believe. So this is just all the continuation of moving forward with the project.
I was just going to clarify, it wasn't a contract, it is a settlement agreement that was in a condemnation action. So those were some provisions that were contained within the settlement agreement.
That's what they're currently working on, but in order to kind of finalize that, they had to know exactly what their parameters of the site would be.
It sounded the same to me. Is there a time frame, and is there a for the actual rollout of the master plan with after today's date? What would the estimated time frame for that be?
I don't have that, but the architect and the client are working toward that right now.
Okay. Do we have any other further questions for the applicant?
No, but I read about what you guys did as far as your clients stepping up in order to try to develop that property, so I really appreciate what you guys are doing, because I know the city was in pretty much a really tough situation as far as what was going to happen with it. So thank you, and we wish you lots of luck.
Thank you.
So I will move that we provide a recommendation of approval to the Planning Commission for the request to close the right-of-way for the alley lying between South Walker Avenue, Southwest 4th Street, South Hudson Avenue. Am I reading the right one? Yes. And Southwest 3rd Street, Oklahoma City Boulevard, with the condition that the owner-developer provide for access to the back of the house functions internal to the development on the site plan for future development required to be submitted to the Downtown Design District Review Board for approval.
Have a motion?
I'll second.
That's a Jones-Trujillo motion. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So item 8 is communications, and item 8A is the administrative approval report, of which we have 16 items. Do they require any further discussion? Unless there are any questions. Seeing there are none, item B is comments from the planning department staff.
We have items on next month's agenda. Obviously, we will keep you all posted,
Okay.
but please make sure it's at least blocked off on your calendar for that.
Do we have a lot of items? Just curious.
2. Item C is comments from the committee members.
So I'll just speak up. This will be Paula's last meeting here. She didn't know I was going to say that.
And we're not super...
She's taken a job with another department. She'll still be doing meetings, but just not for us. And so we will miss her, and I'm sure you guys will also miss her.
Our next meeting date is Thursday, April 16th. And with that, we are adjourned.
So I need to confirm your address, and if you could let us know a little sooner, then, I'm sorry, what? Yeah, I don't know why it didn't come. Okay, so normally you get it, and so, okay, so we'll see if it happens again, then we'll look into that. Okay, thank you.